In this 9th part of the bathroom LVP project, we're going to reinstall the toilet. But first, we need to put one little piece of shoe molding back on, and we're not going to do all the shoe molding now. We just do this one piece because it'd be such a pain to do, and I didn't want to leave the toilet off for any longer than I had to. So you see these staple nails things that were used to install the shoe molding. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these nippers, and you don't necessarily have to nip all the way through. You could if you wanted to use up all your finger strength, but it's easier just to make a sort of a score in it with the nippers, and then just take the pliers and just bend them back 2 or 3 times, and they break right off. So that's one method. Just grab as close as you can to the wood with the nippers and give it a squeeze to make a mark in it. And in this case, instead of just a single nail, these are kind of staples, things that they used when they built this house. And so then you just grab onto it with the pliers and give it a couple of twists back and forth, and it'll pop right off. If you don't score it first, it doesn't work nearly as well. So scoring it with a little nip. Now here's the other option, and it's actually faster and saves a little bit of muscle strength in your fingers. And of course you're going to do hundreds of these, or many dozens of them anyway. And you can also score it with the Dremel tool and a cut-off bit. And you don't have to cut off. If maybe you could cut all the way through it if you have a good Dremel, but I just cut a little bit and then twist. And then you got to remove the caulk to make it set flat against the wall again. And so this is just a sort of a tedious process to go through and scrape the caulk off. And you don't want to cut into the wood if you can help it. There might be there's a little bit of baseboard wood on there, but cut that caulk off. You don't want to leave gaps like that on there, because then when you try to caulk it later and paint it, it'll be sort of a mess. And then you can also need to sometimes get caulk that was sort of in between the pieces. So you're going to replace all that caulk later when you reinstall it. So get it all cleaned up. Sort of tedious, but you can get it all cleaned up for the most part. You're just going to caulk it and paint it again, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's nice to get the excess off, and straight lines make it easier for when you caulk it, when you reinstall it and caulk again. So now that we've got that, we need to start some nails, and normally what I would do is I would use a pneumatic nailer, but since I'm just doing one piece, I'm going to just use the old-fashioned hammer it method. But what happens is those staples are sticking out a little bit, so when you pound a nail on it, it pops that out a little bit, enough to show. You can caulk that again, or use some wood filler, but it's better to I think I'm going to grind them flat when I do the mass work on the molding. Now in this case, I didn't scrape the casing very well, the baseboard, so unfortunately I had to get in there and scrape off some caulk. But once I got that caulk taken out of there, the board fit in there pretty, or the shoe molding fit in there pretty good. And so here, just old-fashioned nailing and getting that into place. Sorry about the motion on the tripod. And now I'm using a nail set to push those nails back in there, so that we can put a little bit of filler on the top of those nails, and then paint over them, and they will look great. Although behind the toilet, you're not too concerned about how it looks, because nobody's going to see that back there anyway. So next we clean up the bottom of the toilet and get rid of that other half of the wax ring. Half of it's stuck on the floor and half of it's stuck on the toilet. So get rid of that here and make sure that'll be good for a next seal. And then I got a waxless ring, and it said to use this spacer, and it gave you specific instructions. There were 2 different brands, and I just happened to pick this one. I don't know anyone's better than the other. But you put this spacer on there, and then you put this other seal thing on there. I think if the flange was above the floor, you wouldn't use the spacer. So depending upon your installation, you may or may not use that spacer. Mine was below the floor level. This piece is always essential to use. That makes the seal against the toilet. So get the toilet back in the room here and pick it up and drop it straight down again on those bolts. Although it's not as important to get it right the first time with the plastic thing. With the wax ring, you have to get it right the first time. So if you're using a wax ring, you have to drop it down, push down, and that's it. You got one shot at it. With the plastic, flexible plastic thing, you have more of a chance. But another thing I noticed about this is it's not like a wax ring where you just push down on it once and it's against the floor. Here, it's up on top and resting on that foam spacer. But once I got these closet bolts in, it started to tighten down and get a little bit better. But I just tightened a little bit on each side as suggested in the instructions until it was tight against the floor. Not real tight. You don't want to tighten it to the point where you could crack the porcelain, but tight enough where it doesn't move when you push on it or try to rock it. So those are tightened now. I'll just put these caps back on and we'll be ready to hook up the water. I'll just drop these caps in place. And so I picked out a plastic. Unfortunately, they didn't have a steel braid one. I would have liked to have that, but they had this one, which looked pretty good. There's also I could have replaced it with the same kind I had, but I didn't like those as much. I don't think that they're quite as good. That's personal opinion. But anyway, you tighten that one nut, plastic nut, hand tight, and then the one that goes against the plumbing fixture here, you use a wrench. But of course, I'm going to get as many turns on it as I can with my fingers before I get the wrench on it. And then here's the entire number of turns I put on with the wrench. I decided instead of making this scene short, I'd include the whole thing. It's not that many turns before it gets tight and ready to turn the water on. And I think this one you can disconnect it and reconnect it and not have a problem. So here I go, turn the water on, and we're ready to see if the toilet's ready to go. So check to see a little while later if there's any water down there, and I'm not seeing any water, so I think I got a no leak situation down there. And let's give her a test. So we drop the thing, and looks like we have a good situation. So there we have it. The toilet's all installed again and operational, and we'll finish up the rest of the room through the baseboards later.